Radio Network.
If you would like to become a wholesale buyer of the premium quality longevity product that you hear about right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, for personal service, you can pick up the phone right now and call Lola at 727-441-3311. Again, that's Lola at 727-441-3311. Or for even faster service, log on to TanTalkHealth.com. That's TanTalkHealth.com. Here's to your health and longevity.
Show me the money.
It's the Employment Opportunity Hour with Gene Hodge every Thursday night from 7 until 8.
So the purpose of the show is to help you out there to find something that you enjoy doing instead of a job. And at the start of the show, I normally give out a formula, which I know will guarantee you to find the type of job that you want right now.
Find out the formula to an enjoyable job with Gene Hodge's Employment Opportunity Hour every Thursday night from 7 until 8 here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Show me the money.
Tampa Bay's Tan Talk. Entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Hey listeners, this is Robert from Nostalgic Radio and Cars. We all love to eat. Well, I would like to tell you about my friends at the Rib Shack Barbecue on West Bay Drive in downtown Largo. Their menu offers family-sized takeout dinners like delicious ribs, chicken, beef, and pork, or sit-down barbecue dinners, sandwiches, and even desserts. They will also cater your party. Everything is barbecued fresh using real oak for that great smoky flavor. So visit my friend Corey at the Rib Shack Barbecue in downtown Largo, West Bay Drive, or call them for a takeout order at 727-501-9090. That's 727-501-9090. They truly have the best smoking barbecue in town. Oh, and be sure and check out their great barbecue sauce. That's the Rib Shack Barbecue in downtown Largo, 727-501-9090. I'm telling Robert from Nostalgic Radio and Cars sent you. You may be owed some money. After 911 and 411, call 541. That's 727-541-1741. Call Gulfstream Motorsports for a diminished value report. Due to my 28 years experience in the auto salvage business, I'm very good with wrecks. So if your car's been involved in a wreck, call me for a diminished value report. Call 727-541-1741. You may be owed some money for the lost value of your repaired vehicle. And visit us at GulfstreamMotorsports.com.
The 409 hit town in 1961 and was Chevrolet's first really big engine. It was a board and stroke version of their W Series 348. And in addition to the sheer size of the motor, it had a few other features which made it one of the muscle car era's earliest horsepower kings.
This is a stock 409 Chevrolet head. It is part number 690. It was made back in the 62, 63 era. You got a completely flat head. You got a complete flat piston, no dome. So you have a perfect flame travel.
Lamar Walden has been racing 409 since Chevy started making them. It's safe to say he knows as much about them as anyone alive. Walden knows all this motor strengths and weak points.
This is a dome piston compared to the 409 piston. The problem that there arose here was this was obstructing, the big dome was obstructing the flame travel, so you had to put a notch in it. Even though you put the notch in whatever, you still had flame travel with the big combustion chamber or the big dome compared to the flat top piston of the 09.
Walden Automotive's test engine is a 1962 vintage 409. It came from Chevy with two Carter 4-barrels, a solid lifter cam, and factory exhaust headers, and they rated it at 409 horsepower. It's time to see just how much of that legendary grunt is real and just how much is legend. Let the games begin. There you have it, Bowtie fans. The tail of the tape on the Beach Boys' favorite engine reads like this: 406 horsepower and 430 foot-pounds of torque at 6,000 RPM. After 45 years, this warhorse can still get it done. That's our benchmark of performance so far in our dyno shootout of the muscle car era's baddest bad boys. Our next rowdy contestant is a true icon of the muscle era, the Super Duty Pontiac 421. The 421 SD didn't just do good on the racetracks of America, It helps save Pontiac from extinction.
Well, Pontiac engines, they have a lot of stroke. A little bit smaller bore than the big block Chevy stuff, but they make a really broad horsepower and torque curve, which is really good for accelerating heavy cars, especially like the old 62, 63 Super Duty cars, the big Catalans. Those things need a lot of torque to get them moving.
In the early 60s, things weren't going so well for Pontiac. In fact, the bigwigs at GM were threatening to close Pontiac down if sales didn't improve. Enter a young whiz kid named Funky Knudsen, who turned Pontiac around in less than 5 years by building horsepower and winning races.
What we got here is an all-original 1963 Super Duty motor we built for a customer of ours named Ron Chandnis. This thing has a 4-inch stroke. It's full 135 bore, which is 30 over. Other than that, it's all basic stock. It's got a copy of a Magna Killer number 10 cam in it. They're all comp cams. It's got the original Ford drives in it, Ford's pistons, the original heads. This thing was rated at 405 horsepower from the factory, and we think this one's going to make probably 100 more than that, somewhere around 500 horsepower.
Well, it's time to put the pedal to the metal and see if the Super Duty is still super. Here goes.
Like 488.2 horsepower, torque wise, peaked at 5,440 pounds, 470 foot-pounds of torque.
It's possible to build an aftermarket Pontiac engine now from scratch using aftermarket block, aftermarket crank, aftermarket heads. We're even reproducing new timing covers. Every piece of the Pontiac motor is available in aftermarket now. You don't have to go out and search the junkyards for hard-to-find pieces and parts anymore. The Pontiac community has really grown in the past 10 years. There's a lot more stuff available than there used to be.
And now, a word from the restorers. These engines are some strong running iron, no doubt, but they're also valuable iron. Even though these vintage motors can still make great power for all-out performance applications, Ted Fisher from Engine Systems has a word of advice.
Most of these engines I work on are older than I am. What I always try and tell people, if you're going to race it and you're going to hot rod it, there's people making aftermarket blocks. So hopefully this stuff will be preserved for the restoration. There's so many aftermarket parts available now for these engines that you can do a replica engine.
We want to save engines like this. This wouldn't be a good candidate for racing because it's so hard to find. If this thing needs to be put up somewhere in a museum, you need to spend your money on aftermarket parts if you want to go racing.
And now...
Hey, Rocky! Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat!
Again?
Nothing up my sleeve! Presto! No doubt about it. I gotta get another hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Hey, everybody. This is Mark Farner, the founding member of Grand Funk Railroad, and I'm listening to Nostalgic Radio in cars where they'll knock you alive.
Okay, listeners, welcome. You are tuned into Nostalgic Radio and Cars. I'm your show host, Robert. Run your computers and Google TanTalk1340.com, and you can see us live here in the studios in downtown Clearwater. And check out our website, GulfstreamMotorsports.com. If you do that, you'll find out all about us. Not to mention, if you want to listen to all our past shows, 500 and, close to 30 of them now, be sure to check out our archive page, Nostalgic Radio and Cars. Good evening, Bobby. How are you?
Hello. There's only one of me. Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, we got Scooby with us. We got our mascot Ed here with us.
Got us. He's really hard to get him to talk, isn't it?
Well, see if we can get him to get him. All right, there we go. Anyway, yeah,
only once a show.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we want to welcome everybody this evening. We have a very good show tonight. We have a legend coming on again for all you F-body fanatics. Now, granted, I always have to preface by saying I am a Ford guy, okay, through and through. I bleed blue. However, I am a closet F-body fanatic. Second-gen Camaros and Firebirds. I truly, truly love those cars. Now, for a quick story, we always like stories, okay? And this is how it became. When I was in high school, I had my Ranchero, and I used to run pretty quick on the street. I was in a 12-second bracket. But I was running, 12.5, 13-1 motor, 514 gears, all of the good stuff, and it was really, really hard to hook up. And so, my top speed was like about 40 miles an hour in my 72 Ranchero GT. So I had that car throughout high school. But a buddy of mine who started out with a Mustang, and I started out with a 57 Thunderbird, which I still have too, by the way. Both cars, both Rancheros, still sitting nice and neatly tucked away in my garage. And his dad bought him a 65 Mustang and fastback. And we kind of tricked it out a little bit, just cosmetics. And then for some strange reason, there was a new car lot that opened up downtown Clearwater, and he would show up with some pretty cool cars. A lot of Camaros, Firebirds, B-body Mopars, Chevelles, and Pontiacs, GTOs and stuff like that. Occasionally some Camaros and Mustangs and Torinos. Well, one day he had this really cool, it was a blue on blue 1970 SSRS 300, I think it was a 350 horse. It had a little bit of a lopey motor in it, so I think it was an option back then. It's 350 horse, if I remember correctly. But anyway, so Rock bought that car, traded his Mustang in. I was ticked. But I started driving the car, and he would let me drive it a lot. And I thought, wow, this is a pretty cool handling car. And I was kind of really impressed with it. I mean, the Mustangs handled good. My Ranchero was big and cumbersome. And my Thunderbird, it was 50s technology, actually 40s technology. So it didn't really do much going around the corner. But I got this, in 1970, I saw a movie came out. It was called Vanishing Point. And it was starred Barry Newman, and he was driving this Challenger, 70 Challenger. And I thought that was kind of a cool car. And I always wanted to challenge it. And then, obviously, growing up in Northern California, Shelby's, Cobras, stuff like that was all over the place. Boss 302, when it came out, I thought the graphics were amazing. 70 Torinos, I thought was a stunning car. The 70 Roadrunner, I thought was a good-looking car. I love the 70 Super Bee even. But I drove Rock's Camaro. Okay, fast forward, 1978, 79. My buddy buys I'm in the Porsches by then. 911s and stuff. Still have my American cars, but I was kind of gravitating towards sports cars because I started going to the road races. So I was a road racing nut. And I like drag racing too, but road racing really turned me on. And so anyway, what happened is we were on our way to Atlanta because with the Shelby Club, what I would do, because I had a 69 Shelby back in 75, 78, 75, 76, 78, whatever. Still have that too, by the way. And we would autocross. I got into autocrossing, and that's and that was through a friend of mine, Dom Forte, down there in St. Petersburg, has Forte's Automotive and Forte's Classic Garage. Big shout out to those guys. 727-544-6440 if you need your classic car fixed. They are stand-up guys, family-run business. Dom, his son Chris, and Anthony, and they're in the ski boats as well. But anyway, so Dom got me hooked into road racing or club racing and autocrosses and gymkhanas and stuff like that. 79, we're going away to Road Atlanta because there's an autocross up there. I'm a Shelby guy. It's a Shelby Club event, and for some strange reason, it seems to me it was against the Porsche Club. And so Don drove a 78 Z28. It was an automatic car. It was the only time he ever ordered an automatic because he was always a stick guy, which was kind of weird. But I guess he was getting lazy. I'm not sure. At any rate, we drove his car up there. Now, he did lower it, and he made his air scoop functional because in 78 they weren't functional or anything like that. Didn't have ram air. My buddy, our buddy, Chris Clary, was using his brother's 79 Z28 4-speed car, T-top car. So we met up there in Atlanta because Chris's brother worked for one of the magazines and was writing articles. And what he would do is he would get cars, he would get promo cars, they would get promo parts and put the parts on it, they test the parts, and they'd write articles on it. Well, in this particular case, it had one big giant Herb Adams sway bar. Now, Herb Adams is a legend in the Pontiac world, okay? And we'll get to that in a little bit. So anyway, I was like really antsy. I said, damn, I wanted to race. I wanted to race really, really bad. Well, Don's out there competing with the Shelbys and the Porsches and stuff, right? And Camaro, it's okay. It's hanging in there, right? And Don's a pretty good driver. And today he races semi-professionally. So he's done very well for himself. So Chris goes, well, if you want to borrow my brother's car, you could do that. So we went through Tech, and Tech told me I had to take the T-tops off, the center caps off. Anything that would fly off the car, I had to take off the car. The only thing this 79 Z28 had, T-top car, mind you, was this big, giant Herb Adams sway bar. The rear sway bar wasn't even on the car. Normally, they come with a front sway bar. The F41 suspensions, a front sway bar, and a rear sway bar. So this sway bar, I believe, was 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches or something like that, but it was a pretty good sized sway bar. Shelby's had 1.25 inches sway bar. Okay, 1 inch, 1.25 inch sway bar. It was an aftermarket deal that they put on them. Actually, it was through Shelby American, but then the bosses and stuff, it was part of the Trans Am program. Anyway, so I went out there and I was able to race. Now, I was racing against 40 cars in my class. And by the end of the day, and I still have the trophies to prove it, I took first in my class. I was embarrassed. I blew away all the Fords. And not to say that I was a great driver, but that Camaro handled so well. All right. Fourth overall and first in my class against other Porsches. And this is at Road Atlanta. We only ran the first 7 turns, so we really only took half the track. But you had to go. But this is the twisty parts. If you're familiar with old Road Atlanta, it was a pretty amazing track. And I was sold on a second-gen F-body Camaro or Firebird. And so the 2 cars that I've always wanted was somewhere between a 70 to 73 Trans Am and a 70.5 Z28. Now, we have a 74 Z28. It's a factory 4-speed car. It handles pretty good for what it is. And we have a 78, and I've had that probably for a million years, too. I got more cars than I need to have. But anyway, and I don't mind sharing it with you because I'm a car guy. But none of these cars are perfect. They're just all kind of, survivor cars from back in the day because I didn't buy anything recently. I've had them for 30, 40 years. But in 1960 and 71, when I first moved to Florida, my mom and dad had a little motel in Clearwater Beach, and many of you that know me know that I had I worked at the motel a lot. Well, my neighbor, Bob Van Bommel, had a 70 Trans Am Ram Air, I'm not sure what it was, 4-speed Trans Am. 70, you got 2 colors. I think it was Lucerne blue and white. I think the first cars that came out were white with the blue stripe. Anyway, so he was always working on his car. So I remember one time I was walking home. I used to mow lawns in the neighborhood, and I was hanging out with him, and he says, "Here, hand me a 5/8 wrench. Hand me a 3/16 this, and a 5/8 this, and a 1/2 inch this, and a 3/8 drive this, and a 1/2 inch drive that." And heck, I didn't even know tools that well back in the day. I knew what a Crest
You
was.
were just dumber than a bag of hammers.
Anyway, he got the car running one day, and he was in high school. He was a couple years older than me. And I remember he coming around on Gulfview Boulevard, which is the main drag in Clearwater Beach. Everybody used to hang out in the parking lot. You had Ford guys, Chevy guys, Mopar guys, Pontiac guys, Oldsmobile guys. Everybody kind of hung out there, And so the thing was, you came out of the parking lot, the beach parking lot, you staged for a second, you let the tires up, and you went through the gears. Cops kind of, if you're a real moron, you know what you're doing. They busted you if you were okay at it. If you had a really impressive car and you could go through all 4 gears in a matter of 20 feet, you're pretty cool. Well, Bob's Trans Am did that. And Bob's a really good friend of mine from way back when. I haven't seen him in a few years, so big shout out to Bob Van Bommel if he's out there somewhere listening to the show. But that kind of got me hooked on Trans Am. Now, what I'm going to do right now is Bobby's going to fire up the stereo because I think today is Mark Farner's birthday from Grand Funk Railroad. So we're going to play a little Grand Funk. And yesterday was Randy Bachman from Bachman Turner Overdrive and guess who? So if you tune into Nostalgia Radio Cars, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with our very special guest here in a little bit.
I'm in love, but I sure picked a bad time to be in love, to be in love. But let her be somebody else's queen. I don't want to know about it. There's too many others that know what I mean, and that's why I got to live without it. I'm in love with the girl I'm talking about. I'm in love with the girl I can't live without. I'm in love, but I feel like I'm wearing it out. I'm in love, but I must have picked a bad time to be in love. 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 All the stories coming back to me from my friends and the people I don't want to see. The things they say I know just couldn't be true, at least not until I hear it from you. 'Cause I still love the little girl I'm talking about. I'm in love with the girl I can't live without. I'm in love, but I feel like I'm wearing it out. I'm in love, but I must have picked a bad time to be in love. A bad time to be in love.
Looking for car shows? Then look no further than FLACarshows.com. On your computer or on your mobile device, FLACarshows.com is a comprehensive list of automotive events, plus videos and news articles. Whether you're looking for car shows, cruise-ins, meetups, automotive festivals, cars and coffees, or anything else relating to an internal combustion engine, then this is a site for you. Check it out online or on your phone at FLACarshows.com. Come enjoy the best brews in Tampa Bay at Dunedin Brewery. Known as Florida's oldest microbrewery, they are always working to create a unique variety of craft beers for every taste. In addition, Dunedin Brewery features a full menu, including everything from their famous wings, burgers, salads, flatbreads, and more. Don't forget about their live music, including the Wednesday Night Players Jam. That's Dunedin Brewery, 937 Douglas Avenue in downtown Dunedin. Visit them online at DunedinBrewery.com.
Okay, we're back, and you're tuned into Nostalgic Radio and Cars. Yes. Okay, so now, in a few minutes, we're going to play a clip from the movie Mac Q. And in the movie Mac Q, John Wayne, who is basically, kind of a cop, drives, and I remember this movie came out, a Brewster Green 73 Trans Am. Now, in 73, 70, 71, 72, Firebirds came in either Lucerne Blue or white. And in 73, they offered three colors, Buccaneer Red, white, and Brewster Green. And then I think in 74, they had added a few more colors to it. But 73 was the last year of the original design with the original front end and everything like that before impact bumpers and stuff. So I saw that movie and I thought, wow, that was really cool. There was a movie that came out a little before that. It had John Carradine in it, and he was driving a red Trans Am, about a 70, 71, 72. Not the original color, but they painted it for the movie for the purposes of the film. And that was kind of a cool movie. So there's been Trans Ams have been in a number of movies. Now, Z28s, I can't recall any, but I will say that the SSRS 773 Z28s is a very good-looking car. And big shout-out to Kenny, because Kenny has one of those. He's one of our avid listeners. And Scott, I think Scott might still have a 68 Camaro. But at any rate, we're going to go to...
At any rate,
yeah. By
well,
the way,
we're going to shout out some great barbecue first.
Yeah, why don't you shout out some great barbecue?
501-9090, that's the number for the Rib Shack Barbecue. You can order it with Uber Eats or Bite Squad if you don't want to leave your house and have that delicious barbecue delivered to your door.
Yeah.
As well as thanking the number one pillow salesman here at the Tan Talk Radio Network, Bill. This is MyPillow, and promo code Bill. This is how you go to mypillow.com and use promo code Bill.
In the Only in America
show.
Only America show, yes. Okay, so...
Then, of course, the best place to find car shows, whether virtual, in-person, unperson, whatever, they all across the state, FLACarshows.com is the place to go.
Okay. Now, for next month is October, which starts in a couple days. We got a theme that we're working on. So we will announce it next week, what our surprise theme is for the month of Rocktober. So, oops, did I give it just a hint? Anyway, so
they'll still be thinking about it for a while.
Yep. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and fire up the turntable there, and let's get our guest on here in a few minutes. And you're tuning into Nostalgic Radio and Cars. This is going to be a really good show. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Walk your street, and I walk mine. And should we meet, would you spare me some time? 'Cause you should see my world, meet my kind, before you judge our minds. Blue car. Sleep your sleep, I'm awake and alive. I keep late hours, you're 9 to 5. So I would like you to know I need the quiet hours to create in this world of mine. Blue collar. I'd like you to know at 4 in the morning things are coming to mind. All I've seen, all I've done, those I hope to find.
John Wayne is McHugh. And this time, for the first time, he's a cop. McHugh's in big trouble. $2 million in junk is missing. And somebody's trying to hang it on McHugh.
I got a message from Patty Samuels. He's sorry he blew it on McHugh, but he rang it up with Boyle.
You're off the investigation, Lieutenant, pending review.
Oh, I think about it. Frank, let him go. He was never part of the team anyway.
I don't like you. I never did. You're a bear. I don't like bears.
That gun's not licensed, McHugh.
Neither am I.
Santiago's got company from out of state.
Santiago's collecting the murder squad.
Suspects include lifelong friends. Evidence points to police brass. And the payoff is a trap for McHugh.
All right, Bud. Come on now. We know you're in there.
McHugh's got a job. If he can't do it with the law, he'll do it beyond the law.
All right, bring him out.
McHugh, the cop nobody can stop. Not even the cops. You've never seen John Wayne before. Like this. McHugh from Warner Brothers.
This is Ed Pink, legendary engine builder. You're listening to Nostalgic Radio and Cars.
Okay, we're back, and you're tuned into Nostalgic Radio and Cars, and it's all about the 1973s, actually 70, 71, 72s, and 73s, the movies, the cars, the music, and our special guest this evening. I'm delighted to welcome to the show the project lead engineer for Pontiac's, let's just call it their hot rod division, the legendary Herb Adams. Herb, how are you?
Still good, thank you.
So give us a little background on yourself. You started with General Motors at a fairly young age, and I guess you kind of got lucky and walked right into a really cool position with Pontiac, right?
Yeah, first connection with remotely with General Motors is back in the 50s. Fisher Body, which was a division of General Motors, put on a contest for high school kids to design model cars, and then they built the models and sent them in. And they had a contest going on, and it was pretty widespread around the country for this thing in that period. That was my first experience with it.
And then
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, no. And then from there, what happened?
Well, I won a scholarship for one of my models, and I was able to relay that into getting approved to General Motors Institute, which was actually recognized college. It still exists. It's called Kettering now. And so I went to that, got a 4-year program to be a project engineer. So that was my next connection.
Okay,
and I started that in about 1957. And what's significant is the glory years of Pontiac started about then too. So I wasn't part of it, but I got to watch it, And that was basically with Knutson, Estes, and DeLorean when they came into Pontiac and turned it around.
So what was it like working for John Z. DeLorean and Bunky Knutson at the time?
Well, I never worked with Knutson. Like I say, I was a student.
Okay.
And he was general manager. I think I saw him once. Now, the next guy in line was Estes, and I did have one encounter with him as a student. We had an argument on how to design a defroster nozzle, and he came to my side, so that was good. And
Now,
then,
you said
I did work with DeLorean quite a bit actually.
okay. Now you said you designed a defrost nozzle. So what people don't realize every time they think of car design, they don't realize that there's a team of designers that design small little parts. I don't care if it's an ashtray bearing, headlight switch, a rheostat, or a wiper squirter. So how do you go through the process and go from there to being kind of like the lead project engineer on some of the coolest Pontiacs that ever spun some tires on the asphalt?
Yeah. Well, I was a student when that go around with Estes.
Okay.
And then when I became an engineer, I had to, work in the plant for a year to get experience in that regard. And then when I came out, I was a project engineer in, I did that for a year or so. And then they had, at that time, we used to actually test cars, for performance and fuel economy. And I got the job to run that team out at the proving grounds. So, kind of a funny story. So I'm out there doing my job the best I could. And at that time, DeLorean was the head of Pontiac. And he had the Banshee on his list. He wanted to do a sports car called the Banshee. And Bill Collins was his project engineer on it. And so I'm out there one day, running tests. And he and John and Bill show up with the Banshee, the zoomy-looking sports car. And I didn't know what was going on. And they jumped in the car, and right when they get in, Bill Collins looks at me and he says, "Herb, grab that D-Jag, which we had sitting around, and see if you can keep up with me." Okay.
Wow.
So there's a handling road, of course, and so I'm right, 2 car lengths behind him for the whole trip. And I remember when DeLorean got out of the car, he looked at me and he says, "I guess Herb didn't understand the purpose of this demonstration." Because, obviously they wanted to be able to pull away from the E-Jag. So anyway, that was my first experience with John. But I think it was a week later that he got me assigned to, what they call it, advanced design, which was his contribution to Pontiac back in '57, was an independent engineering group to do new ideas. And so he got me put on that, I guess, because I upset the apple cart on his test. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm working in advanced design. And that was really great because, there's a whole bunch of stories about things we did. But I think more relevant to your friends with Trans Ams is the corporation never let John do his Banshee, but when the Mustang came, and then of course GM woke up and going to do the Camaro, and they gave DeLorean the rights to do the Firebird, and that would, there was first Firebird I think was 67, I think.
Right.
And so he knew that was coming, and he called Bill Collins again, kind of a partner. He's way more authority in the organization but we were a couple of hot rodders, And DeLorean called us in, and he said, "I want a car, a Firebird that's better than the Z28." And that was our assignment. He walked away. do something. And so we did.
Now I just want to back up just for a second. I have listeners that send me texts every once in a while, and somebody just sent me a text, and I was wondering, because back in the early 60s, they had the original Super Duty program with the 421 Pontiacs, and there was a gentleman by the name of Mac McKellar, and somehow there was an article, and I was reading it a long time ago, and they just called to my attention that he had an overhead cam motor, 421, that had aluminum heads and stuff. Were you ever involved in that? Do you know anything about that project?
I was not involved, but I remember seeing it.
Okay.
And I also remember they never ran it.
They never ran it?
Never put it on the dyno.
Okay. Now, when you got involved with the Firebird, now they had the overhead cam 6-cylinder motor, which really the valve cover looks very similar to that. Is there any correlation between that 421 Super Duty overhead cam motor and then the actually it was kind of like a slant 6, wasn't it?
It was just a 6.
Oh, just a 6?
Straight 6.
Okay.
Yeah. And again at that period, there was interest in getting cheaper, smaller, simpler cars, and I don't know who instituted the inline 6, but I remember it being worked on. I never worked on it.
Now
the only thing I remember is that engine was in a 67, 69 F car,
mm-hmm.
and when the new F car was coming, in 70.5. The 6-cylinder wouldn't fit. The crank, cam pulley was too high in the hood, and that's when they decided to go with the V8 on all the Firebirds.
Okay, well now there was an article there where you were involved in a 6-cylinder kind of an experiment with some sort of prototype Pontiac with that Sprint motor in it, and you put a set of Webers on it, and you kind of created a makeshift shaker. Tell us about that story.
Okay, well, like I said, the program for the first Firebirds were 6-cylinder base engine.
Mm-hmm.
And so DeLorean's concept of this new Z28 beater was more like a Jaguar or Datsun. In other words, high-performance 6-cylinder engine.
Okay.
So they gave me a pre-production Camaro 67 and told us to do something, So in the process of trying to make the car handle better, we thought it'd be nice if it had more performance. So we put 3 Webers on it. The trouble is we couldn't at the time, I don't the reason, but we could only get downdraft rubbers. So by the time you put them on a 6 to try to get the all the cylinders working, the carburetors were sticking out the hood. So I cut a hole in the hood and we made an air cleaner that poked through the hood. The start of the shaker phenomenon.
Take us to the design of the 69 Trans Am, how that came about.
Okay. Well, like I say, we got the assignment, make it better than a Z28.
Okay.
And they gave me a 67 Camaro prototype.
Uh-huh.
And what a mess. Oh my God, what a car. Or at least the one I had to work with. It had power hop, it had brake hop, it had, you couldn't even drive it down a side street and keep it, where it belonged. It bounced all over the place and steered all over the place. And I thought, oh my God, Now I did put race tires on it. I figured if we're going to do a high performance car, we better do all the work on race tires. And so the combination of the race tires and the production Camaro suspension was terrible, basically. So what we did was a logical thing in trying to fix the handling. And, we went, I think, 2 big steps. One is, of course, this power steering in those days was, no feedback and slow ratio and, all that routine. And so I went to our, the Pontiac engineer in charge of steering gears, a guy named John Alphas. And I told him, I said, I want some with, big, good feedback and fast ratio. And I can remember he said, talk to me next Friday, I'll have it for you. I mean, that's how easy it was.
Wow.
Talking to people who know what the hell they were doing. And so that was one of the big improvements, I think, was the fact that we had, modern, what today is very normal steering, and then it was something bit new and different. So, and what else do we do? Well, the other big thing was stabilizer bar. The car had a lot of roll, especially when you had sticky tires. And so we put a bigger front stabilizer bar on it. I think we went from like 1 inch to 1.25 inches or something like that. But the effect was negligible. And all you got to do again is study the details, and you see that connecting a bigger bar with soft bushings gives you very little effect. So again, I went to one of the Pontiac engineers, a guy named Josh Madden, who actually did the Pontiac rubber front bumper. But I told him what I needed. I said, I need some bushings, higher stiffness. And he had them in a week later. These guys knew what they were doing. All they needed is somebody to tell them.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, you, at the time, when did you actually get into racing? Were you kind of like a sports car racer at the time, so you had kind of an understanding of all this? Because obviously the average engineer that comes out of school doesn't really know a lot of this stuff unless he's actually had some on-the-job experience, so to speak. And by that I mean you've had some racing background, some driving experiences, so you kind of know what a car is supposed to do, how it's supposed to handle. I mean, it's kind of like you were telling the story about driving the E-Type Jag or the D-Type, whatever it was back then. And I know that a lot of the manufacturers back then, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, would grab cars from other manufacturers and sports cars and try to copy them and, use them and take them apart and dissect them and try to make their cars better. But what's interesting, is throughout the 60s, okay, even though those are the 60s and early 70s are my favorite cars, they never really put anything on the planet that was comparable to a European car. It was strictly all American. So everything you guys did was American. It was American handling, American cars, American muscle, and the whole 9 yards. So from your perspective, were you at that time kind of playing around with, road racing cars or drag racing cars to kind of give you a little bit of idea where you wanted to go with these cars?
Not initially. When I got put in advanced design, let's see, that would have been about 65, I guess, somewhere there. I was 25 years old, see? Mm-hmm. And I had experience with the model cars, but never in actually driving or racing. And,
okay.
And one of my assignments, in addition to making the Trans Am, a neat car, I was the coordination guy, engineer with Jerry Titus, who had convinced DeLorean that he could race a Firebird. Okay. And so I had to go out and work with Jerry Titus and didn't have a clue. I'm in a very strong learning curve here. And the beauty, I guess, was because of that experience with the actual Trans Am race car, I was able to feed some of that flavor into the Trans Am model that we did. So.
Okay.
But that was my first experience.
So the Trans Am project, the 69 Trans Am, was that, you were involved in that program. To what extent were you involved in that program? The development of that car before it came into production? Well,
as I mentioned, we did the steering and the stabilizer bars and the wheels and tires and lowered it, of course, and stiffened the shocks. We did, I would call it hot rod chassis development. We did some aerodynamic stuff. A guy named Paul Lamar, who I met racing the Firebird, he came and we did quite a bit of spoiler studies and, worked on the aerodynamics. And then, of course, styling took some of that and gave the car some visual character as well as, handling.
When they came out with the second-gen F-bodies, the Camaros and the Firebirds, were you involved in that development? Because the transition from the first generation F-body cars to the second generation, which happens to be my favorite, by the way, the handling, the performance, the looks was entirely different and, in my opinion, far superior.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. We did have we thought a more exciting car was E28, but the guys at Chevy did a great job. They split the rear shocks, one front, one rear, took care of most of the power hop and brake hop. They put the steering gear in front of the axle, which gives you bump understeer rather than bump oversteer.
Okay.
And so they did it. You're right. They did a great job, but it was interesting. Of course, the fact that a bunch of renegade engineers and special advanced design, that was where we were. It really infuriated the regular Pontiac chassis guys. like, what the hell are those guys doing? And how did they get that released? You know, all this stuff. Well, it's because we had Bill Collins and DeLorean was still there. So we had a direct avenue. And we didn't even go through the chief engineer. Just went around him. Well, obviously in an organization that creates a lot of friction. And so when the new, as you were saying, the second generation F-car came on the picture, and of course we had prototypes, and we could see it was a better car, but because the chief chassis engineer was pissed because, I guess I can't use that word.
That's okay.
Because we went around him when it came time to release the second generation, he just went with Z28 rather than all the work we'd done with Trans Am.
Really?
And, oh yeah, well, this is how it works in a corporation. And so I found out about it, and we had already developed some parts. And I told Bill Collins, I said, you know what those guys are doing? And he didn't. So I said, what are we going to do? I told him I had a package that he could, evaluate. So I remember he gave me a prototype car on a Friday afternoon and said I had to have it back Monday morning. So myself and the guy working with me, Dan Harden, we took the car out to the proving ground and ran our stuff and ran their stuff. And at that time, our package was 0.8 of a G on the skid pad, which, at the time was really good. And the regular Camaro package was 0.7 of a G. So we had something to talk about. And of course, we went back to Bill, and he had enough power within Pontiac Engineering to get our stuff on the second generation, all of our handling improvements. And the chassis engineer was so delighted that he told his engineers they never were ever to look at a car on a skid pad again. Well, you work in a corporation, you know what it's like.
No, actually, I've never been in corporate America, so I can only imagine what poo-poo runs downhill. I do know that. That's what I'm told. But anyway, all right, so we got a little bit of time left here. I want to get into Super Duty programs. You were involved in the SDs, the 455 SD program. Tell us a little bit about that, how that came to fruition.
Okay, part of our assignment with Jerry Titus was to do the engine. And at that time, the Fords and the Javelins were about 450 horsepower, and the limit was 5 liters, 300 cubes. So the first Pontiacs we put together using the best parts available on a 303, it ended up being the Pontiac version. It was 300 horsepower.
Oh,
quite a ways from 450. See.
Yep.
So one of our assignments, in addition to working with Jerry Titus and doing the Trans Am car, was to do this 303 engine. And I had two really good guys working on that. Tom Nell and Jeff Young were the two engineers. Very, very talented. and they had car experience. They weren't green by any means. And so over a 1 year period, we did get up to 460 horsepower. Just, cylinder head, camshafts, all the things you got to do to make the power. And we were competitive then. And a side thing was when DeLorean found out we only had 300 horsepower, he called Jack Brabham and asked him to do a engine for the Pontiac, a Pontiac block. And it took them a year, and by then we had the power. So we did get their engine and tested, and it wasn't any different than ours. We were the same 450 range. So kind of a sidelight.
Okay.
By the way, speaking of Jack Brabham, it's interesting when we got what we thought was a good handling in 69, the package, Trans Am. And of course, Bill Collins liked it, so he got DeLorean to show up. This is the general manager who comes and finds me in my desk. I want to ride your car. I said, okay. So we ran out, and he terrified the local roads, showing how fast it would go. And DeLorean liked it so much, he had Brabham show up a week later to test it also.
Oh, wow. That was impressive.
And Brabham says, it's got a little bit understeer. The way you're driving it, yeah. Anyway, another Brabham story.
Well, now, back in the day when you were working for Pontiac, so like
You
around...
want to go back to talk about engines?
Okay, well, oh yeah, talk about the Super Duty, right.
Okay, a little further along. Okay, so we had found how to get a Pontiac to make horsepower. And my boss at the time, Rush D, his name was, he said, why don't we take what you've learned on the 303 and do a NASCAR engine, which at that time they were looking at smaller displacement, three. Yeah, well, we did a 6-liter, 366. And we made, I think, 600 horsepower. It was pretty good. And then that all turned out real good, except the plant didn't want to bother with a 6-liter engine. So again, Rusty said, well, why don't you take everything you learned on engine development and do a street ride? Now, Rusty was one of the guys who did the GTO, so he had, that background. And so we did the 455 Super Duty using what we had learned on the other two engines. And the first Super Duty engine was almost 600 horsepower. But then, we had to put up with emissions and they quit doing gross horsepower, went net horsepower. And, they finally whittled it down to, 400 or something in production. But the potential was still there for Super Duty.
Interesting.
And of course I got fired for doing it, but that's another story.
Well, now, oh, really? Okay. So, here's what I want to do. I want to, because we're just about up against the clock, Herb, and I truly enjoyed it. I have tons and tons of questions, and I have a lot of fans and a lot of listeners that are into F-body cars like myself. So I would like to invite you back and have you come back and I'd like to do like a part 2. And then we'll probably start a little bit earlier, so because there's got to be millions of stories. But here's one question I have to ask you that everybody's going to want to know, and I want you to think about this. Back in the day when you guys were hot rodders, there's always these stories about, the engineers got together, and on weekends they would show up there and they would play. And so what we want to do is hear about some of the play stories and the little experimenting and all the stuff that you guys got away with that now, 40, 50 years later, you can actually talk about it because nobody's going to fire you now. You're just, you're telling stories and sharing it with the world. So we'd love to have you back, and we'd love to have you tell those stories. Would you be willing to do that for us?
Okay. Give me a warning, though, so I know what and where and when.
Okay, I will certainly do that. Herb, I want to thank you very much for coming on Nostalgic Radio and Cars this evening. Those are great stories. I like to jump around a little bit because some of the stuff you lead up to kind of bounces back, and I kind of, because you want to kind of like lead up to the story and then kind of say where its origin came. But we truly enjoyed having you on the show this evening. I want to wish all the best to you. I want to thank Scott Scheel for helping us out. Big shout out to Scott, big Pontiac guy, the guys at Poncho and everything like that, and all the Pontiac guys. And we sure wish Pontiac was still around because I some great cars. Trans Am is legendary, and you had a lot to do with it. And again, I want to thank you very much for your contribution.
Okay, let me know.
I'll do that. Thank you, Herb, and you take care and keep in touch.
Okay, good deal.
And we'll plan on having you back. Thank you very much. I want to thank my very special guest, Herb Adams, a legendary Herb Adams, who basically got 86 for coming up with one of Pontiac's greatest little motors, the 455 Super Duty. But he'll tell us a little bit more about that. Super guy, great stories. I'm delighted to have having him on the show this evening. And don't forget, all my listeners, don't forget to tune in there every Tuesday night between 7 and 8 p.m. on the Tam Talk Radio Network, where you can hear some of the most fascinating legend names in motorsports. Next month, if this all goes well, we're going to be rocking in Rocktober. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our website, GulfstreamMotorsports.com. Don't forget, Nostalgic Getting Cars for any of our past shows. Bobby, want to give out the social media real quick?
Hey, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Nostalgic Radio and Cars.
Get out there, drive your cars, ride your motorcycles, splash around in your boats, jump around on your quads, and everybody take advantage of motorized goodies, okay? Because that's what we're all about here. That and music. So in the meantime, everybody stay safe, drive carefully, and love your family.
To the other side, bring on you out. Oh, yeah! Rain to see, week to week, day to day, hour to hour, day straight, deep and wide. Bring on to the other side. We're gonna do to the other side. We're gonna do, we're gonna do, we're gonna do, we're gonna do.
WTAN Clearwater,
FM 106.1,
WDCF Dade City,
FM 102.3,
WZHR Zephyr Hills,
FM 104.3.
Listen.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Matt Piper in New York. The first presidential debate of 2020 is in 1 hour between the top two contenders, President Trump and Joe Biden. Correspondent Steve Futterman has a preview.
It is one of the most highly anticipated presidential debates, and millions and